All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, as far as cell cycle regulations go, there are many proteins found inside the cell and outside the cell that are going to regulate division. Again, proteins do everything for the cell, even down to cell division processes and going between phases like mitosis and G2 and S and G1. Now, some of these proteins are responsible for starting and stopping the cell cycle, and others seem to speed it up or slow it down. Basically, these proteins send signals to prevent excessive cell growth and keep tissues in the body from disrupting other tissues, right? And if these signals are not sent correctly, then you have a dysregulation of the cell cycle, which leads to cancer, right? Because cancer is uncontrolled cell growth, and the cell cycle is what regulates cell division, and if it's dysregulated, then you're going to have uncontrolled cell growth and ultimately cancer in the form of tumors and tissues in the body disrupting other tissues. So, uncontrolled cell growth, as we see here, these are some artists' illustrations of cancer cells. In the next unit, and possibly toward the end of this unit, we'll see some real cancer cells. So if the cells in a tissue grow uncontrollably, the consequences can be severe. We all know that cancer is fatal. So cancer cells, they don't respond to signals that regulate cell growth, right? They don't care if they're surrounded by their cells. They don't care about being attached to a surface. They don't listen to these proteins that regulate the cell cycle. And they divide uncontrollably, and the masses they form, these masses of cells, are called tumors. And tumors can damage healthy surrounding tissues, which is often how people die from cancer. But all cancers do have one common thing, and it's that the protein regulators that control the cell cycle have failed at their job. Okay, protein regulators have failed at their job for one reason or another. There's no distinct reason for it, and many cancers are caused by many different reasons, but this is the common theme between all cancers. So, I talked a while back about cell division and the relationship between it and asexual reproduction, and there is in fact a relationship here. So we see a cell up here, and this cell does appear to be in telophase, right? We see that classic cleavage furrow, some nuclei reforming here. So it appears to be in telophase, looks like cytokinesis is starting. And then we have this hydra, right? This single-celled hydra that's reproducing another identical organism, right? Although this doesn't look like our classic animal cell, the same thing is kind of happening, right? Like one is kind of budding off the other, like we see here. So offspring in asexual reproduction are produced by only one parent, a little sea sponge for an example. And each parent passes on all the genes to its offsprings. This is exactly what's happening in cell division. So cell division, mitosis, is a form of asexual reproduction for the eukaryotic cell. And now let's look at some advantages and disadvantages of asexual reproduction. Let's list them out. Advantages, it's fast, right? Sexual reproduction takes a lot of time. There's a large number of offsprings that can be produced. And the parent doesn't have to find a mate. In asexual reproduction, the organism is not reliant on finding another willing organism to pass on its genes with. Disadvantage is that all offspring are exactly alike. Yeah, that's actually a disadvantage, and we're going to find out why in the remaining slides in this unit. There's no variation, basically, no genetic variation, no change, no chance for evolution, or a very slim chance for evolution. And the ability to adapt to the changing environment is greatly reduced because we need changes in our DNA as a species to ultimately adapt to our environment, because our environment's ever changing. I know in our lifetimes it seems like it's not, but over the course of a few hundred or 1,000 years, the environment does change, and humans have to be able to adapt to that. And we do that so well by having changes in our DNA, mutations, positive mutations that we refer to as adaptations. Now let's talk about sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction requires two parents, we know that. Each parent is going to pass on half of its genes to the offspring, right? We see some illustrations of sperm fertilizing egg cells here. Now, you must have a male and female. Male produce sperm and female produce the eggs. So there are some advantages and disadvantages here to sexual reproduction. The disadvantages is that we have to find a mate, and sometimes a sexually reproducing organism does not ever find that mate, so their genes don't get passed on. And in sexual reproduction, typically you're only producing a few offsprings. And it takes a long time, right? Humans are pregnant for up to 10 months, elephants 2 years, other organisms for months at a time as well. Whereas cell division, a form of asexual reproduction for the eukaryotic cell, can happen as fast as 24 hours. Advantages. All the offspring are genetically different, and that is enough of an advantage to outweigh the 3 disadvantages. So sexual reproduction involves gametes, which we know are sex cells, sperm and egg, reproductive cells, and the fertilization, right? The union of sperm cells and egg cells to form what's known as the first cell you were, that's right, a zygote, a fertilized egg, an egg that has been fertilized by a sperm cell. Now, let's look at cell division and chromosome number during cell division, right? This was the hardest part of this unit, right? And the reason it matters now is because meiosis, when we talk about making these sperm and egg cells, it really takes into account chromosome number, because chromosome number is going to change. In meiosis, we are not making an exact duplicate of the original cell. So here we have something called a karyotype, which is just a layout of all the chromosomes, right? All the chromosomes are laid out. All 23 pairs in the human body, in the human cell, human eukaryotic cell, are laid out right here. So if an organism is the result of sexual reproduction, it has 2 sets of chromosomes. And what I mean by 2 sets is, you see how these pairs are all numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 22, and then 23 here. This is one set. This is one chromosome, this is another. This one is from mom, this one is from dad. That is a set of number 1 chromosomes, if that makes sense. One set comes from mom and one set comes from dad, of course. Where else would they come from? And these sets are said to be homologous chromosomes, right? Chromosomes that are identical or nearly identical to one another, right? Look at the 2 number 1 chromosomes here. They look similar in size. The 2 number 2 chromosomes look similar in size. All the way down to the 2 number 16 chromosomes are similar in size and even shape. Okay, so they're said to be homologous or very similar to one another. And they should be, right? They're both from humans, just of different genders. Well, we have some overlap here. So homologous chromosomes are 2 copies of each chromosome, one coming from mom and one coming from dad, right? And you can say that about any 2 people, right? If you look at a male and female ever, you can say that that male has chromosomes that are homologous to that female's chromosomes, or very, very similar. Excuse me. Homologous chromosomes carry the same genes, but they may have different expressions of that gene. And what I mean is, let's say for instance on this number 1 chromosome, the genes for eye color is carried there. Okay, but dad might have the gene for brown eyes and mom might have the gene for blue eyes. Still the gene for eye color, just different versions of it. And we call different versions alleles. That word is going to come up a lot more from this point on and even into the next unit. Stay tuned, folks.